I'm Ekta Mokashi. I'm from Bangalore, and my family also are from Bangalore. I live in London right now. I moved here to study, and actually, I enjoyed cooking and baking quite a lot, but I chose to become a computer engineer instead. So that's what I do. I'm a product manager. I work in one path, and I like solving problems. That's all I do, really. That's my job. As a child, I actually was very geeky and nerdy. I was big on science and maths, and so I decided that's exactly what I'm going to be doing in university as well. Closer to the time when I did go into university, I decided that computer science combines the best parts of science. A mathematical background would be useful. So that's kind of why I chose a computer science degree. During the course of my degree, I actually realized that a lot of the subjects that I was actively choosing were more maths-based. So I think, in retrospect, if I had to choose a different degree, maybe today I would choose a maths degree and go into something more academic. But it was quite interesting. I think for me, the sorts of subjects that I enjoyed in university were statistics and operations research. They're very numerical, and they focus a lot on numerical analysis and things like that. So that's kind of what I really enjoy doing from a purely academic perspective. But I think one of the biggest problems I had with being in a university doing a computer science course was there was very little space to do something more creative, such as, I recently discovered that I really like to bake and cook. And even though technology is used in so many artistic ways, I think the degree I did was very focused on hardcore technical outputs. So I wish that I'd done a degree that would give me more flexibility. As a product manager, I spend most of my time analyzing how my users use the products that we build. I work in a fintech startup, so a lot of products that we build are focused around helping people manage their finances better. So it's quite interesting to see different people's attitude towards finance and try to help all of them use the same product. And so that's kind of what most of my job is. I think soon after I graduated, I took up a job as a programmer in an investment bank, and I realized that investment banking and a big company itself was quite a daunting experience, but also equally programming itself was a job that I found quite isolating and quite boring in some sense. So that kind of made me look for other roles within my company where I was, and that's when I realized that actually you could work in technology but do a completely problem-solving / business-facing role. And that's when I decided to try my role as a business analyst. A lot of my job then, because it was an investment bank, it was focused on talking to bankers, trying to understand how they trade different financial products. And that helped me understand that actually I like interacting with people more and understanding their problems and trying to help them kind of overcome those problems through technology. So that's what got me interested in that side of I suppose the tech business, and over time I think the role of product manager kind of evolved, and I decided that that's what I'm going to be, and so this is where I am. Before lockdown, my day would normally start very early. I'd be up at 5:30, just getting ready to go to work, and I'd take the train to work at 7 o'clock. It takes about an hour to get there, and at 8 o'clock or 8:30 I'm at my desk. I normally spend the first hour of my day going through my emails. A large part of being a product manager is talking to your customers and understanding what they want. Sometimes it's through direct contact with them. Sometimes it's automated emails that you get, which you get because there have been issues with your product. So a lot of my time goes into analyzing what's coming to my inbox, trying to understand how to frame my day. After my initial hour, just looking at what I need to catch up on, I speak to my tech team. So as a product manager, a large part of my time is spent actually talking to the tech team, to a group of developers that are actually building the product. So they're building new features or improving existing ones. So yeah, I normally end up having a daily stand-up, trying to understand where they are, whether the stuff that they're working on aligns with the roadmap that I built, etc. The rest of the day is actually generally filled with a lot of meetings, either about new features, new products that we could be building, or speaking to other stakeholders within my company to understand what the vision for the business is and how we, as a product team, we can be helping achieve those goals for their business. So that's kind of what my overall day looks like. For product management, if I had to come into this role, not having done a computer science degree, I think one of the biggest skills that product management needs is ability to analyze data. So being good with everything from using a spreadsheet or Excel to using more complicated data tools, whether it's just learning basic query languages like SQL or going further into the big data realm. I think any range of those skills that you can bring to the table will already give you a good starting point, because a large part of your job is to analyze how people are using your product. The other thing that you definitely need as a product manager is that the role is never well defined as a product manager. It depends on the company, it depends on you're kind of the binding role between multiple roles, bringing people together, getting them to coordinate things. So I think having good communication skills and good listening skills is very important. I think this is one of the things that I developed over time doing while working the job. But I've noticed that a couple of my interns who actually are, I think they probably graduated from high school but didn't actually do a full degree or anything. But they spent a couple of years after high school working in cafes and restaurants. And I've noticed that one of their strongest skills is that they're able to listen and draw conclusions very quickly, because they're always actively listening for their customers. So I think there are ways that you can develop those sorts of skills. The other skill that is, again, kind of combined with communication is being able to have a good sense of presentation skills, because as a product manager, your job is to present the vision for the product, and being able to articulate exactly what you want your product to be doing to a technical audience and a non-technical audience is quite important. So those are skills that are never actively taught to us. There's always kids who in school who may be actively interested in debating or essay writing, and they definitely develop themselves. But otherwise, at least growing up, I know that there was a large emphasis on do well in maths and science, and that's the main thing you need. So there's a lot of softer skills that probably were left behind. So yeah, I would definitely encourage kids to not ignore those, because those are more important than anything else. As a teenager, actually in high school, I always thought that I'm going to grow up and be an astronaut, like many kids do. And I think by the time it was my turn to apply to university and choose what to study, I decided that I actually like computer science quite a lot. So I decided that that's what I'll pursue. I saw myself being a developer that'll write thousands of lines of code and build amazing software. So that's kind of what made me decide to go become a computer scientist. So what is Fintech? Fintech is, I think, the industry that combines finance and technology. A large part of my role has been more on the technology side rather than the finance side. So to actually work in Fintech, you don't have to know that much about finance at all, because no matter how much you learn about finance, whatever job you do, there'll always be a new financial product or a new approach to banking that will come out in the market, and you have to learn on the job. I think one of the biggest, skills you really need is being able to kind of read about these things and learn them as you go. The skill there is literally being being open to reading about things that you wouldn't actually read about. For example, in my free time, I probably won't go and read about what is open banking or what is a banking API or something of that sort. But definitely during my, it is something that I need during my work hours. So, and I think India, specifically Bangalore, it's at the moment fintech is booming. You have Paytm, you have PhonePe, you have all sorts of newer players in the market coming in, and I think the very topic that I used to hate as a child, which was I used to hate going to the bank, but I think with technology coming into play, making sense of how the banking system works and how I can use an app to save money or make an investment, etc., has become so much more accessible and so much more easy and engaging. So I would say that being able to be on top of what the trends are in the market is mainly what's important, rather than knowing things in that much detail. I think I've been quite lucky. I've had parents who've been fairly supportive. So in terms of making career choices, I've been quite flexible. They've been quite open-minded. I think for me, one of my biggest challenges with my family was when I started my career. I started in a big investment bank, and a lot of families kind of have this attitude where they want to make sure that your job is stable and it pays you well, etc. And I think one of my challenges was convincing them when I wanted to leave an investment bank and join a completely unknown startup. I think that actually I was faced with a lot of opposition from my family for that. But I think eventually, once I settled in, once I saw that actually, even though I was working very hard, working much longer hours, I was generally happier with the kind of work I was doing. So I think as long as you're open to change and trying to make it work for you, you will find the support you need. But also, I think from a professional perspective, I think one of my challenges working in technology, which I think the technology scene is quite different in different parts of the world, and definitely here in the UK, there are very few women in technology. Even during my degree, there was like 10 women in a class of 120, which was hardly anything. So I think one of the biggest challenges that I've faced building out my career here has been being able to be taken more seriously as a woman. I think a lot of times people actively assume that you probably don't understand technology, or you don't know the answers to things just because you're not a woman. And I think as long as you work hard and you know what you're talking about, you make an effort, I think you eventually get there. You eventually build the relationships with people that start to trust you and understand that you know what you're talking about. But I think that has definitely been a challenge. It's definitely getting better now. Increasingly, there's more and more women in technology. But I think it's a very interesting challenge to face. Challenges as a woman, I think a lot of my challenges weren't really active challenges where somebody would tell me, oh, you don't understand because you're a girl. But it's when you start to see a trend that the kinds of people who are getting promoted, or the kinds of people who are getting more interesting projects to work on, generally you do see that there's an imbalance. But that has definitely changed. Even now for new graduates, I think there's been an active interest from women who do work in technology, who are trying to encourage more women to enter the industry, but also lots of companies are kind of encouraging women to take positions of power. I think one of the biggest points of debate has been the fact that women sometimes can be less demanding, whether it comes to asking for more responsibility or asking for more money or compensation. And there's a lot expected out of women to kind of be as aggressive as a typical man would be. So I think that there's a few challenges there, but I think I've been personally lucky that I've always had managers, whether they've been women or men, who've been very open-minded and who trusted me. And I think it's pretty important, whatever industry you work in, to find yourself a mentor who help you understand what what kinds of options are available for you in terms of growing yourself personally and also professionally. I think in terms of general advice, I would definitely encourage students who are either doing their graduation or kids who are in high school as well to talk to people who do the job that they think that they want to be doing. For example, I wish that before I decided that I'm going to be a software engineer, I'd spoken to someone who is a software engineer. I've been lucky. I have an older brother who is a software engineer, and at that point of time, what he was doing for a living sounded very exciting to me. But what I didn't know was when you work in a software company, you're not just sitting there writing lines of code. There's teams involved, with each team having very specific responsibilities. You work with business, you work with sales, you work with testers, you work with designers, you work with clients. And I think the biggest gap in my skill set was not so much on the technical side, but more in terms of relationship management, understanding who does what and how their role impacts my job. I think that's one of the things that a lot of students, of course, don't have when they graduate. But it'd be nice if students had the opportunity to actively engage either with their seniors who have obviously graduated before them, or if they have family and friends who do the kind of job that they think they want to be doing. I would encourage them to have a conversation about what does a workplace look like. I think one of the things that I've seen some of my kids do, my kids as in my interns at work do, is that they spend a few months working with us, and sure, the actual job that they do is not that much, but I think they expose themselves by talking to everybody within the company. So I would encourage people in high school to maybe if they have summer holidays, to spend 2 weeks doing some a free maybe internship in, I don't know, their siblings' workplace, or any workplace that's willing to kind of have them shadow around for a couple of days, just to know what goes on in a company. I think it's quite interesting to see how little somebody who's even, I don't know, second or third year of university knows about what goes on in a workplace. Because I think one of the things that I never understood as a student was, why are there so many meetings? What actually happens in them? And I think it's very interesting to kind of see a workplace as an outsider. And if you have the opportunity, I would ask them to choose that. Aim to take a role that at least sounds like what you want to be doing, even if it doesn't give you everything on day one, because you will get better at it and you will be able to develop a image for yourself within that industry and work your way up. That would be definitely what I would say. I think one of my favorite quotes, it's not even a quote, I think for me one of my most important things is to be kind. I think the world would benefit from being kind to each other, to animals, to your environment, etc. I think that's one of the things that with every team that I've ever worked in, I think for the longest time I was the only female person in the team. And one of the things that I realized is that I used to be quite shy. I used to feel very worried if I didn't know the answer to something. But I've always felt more comfortable just because, let's say, all it needs is one team member who's being nice to you and says, "Can I help you?" And actually offers you help and teaches you something. They spend their time and you feel like, okay, there is somebody who believes in me and I will be able to do this job or this role. So I think I've benefited mostly from people who have chosen to be kind. So I would say that my main message to the world would be, actively, please try to be kind. So I'd say to students that Skill at Will basically gives you the opportunity to kind of explore courses and specializations that you are interested in. So instead of you focusing on, let's say, 4 years of doing a degree which covers a wide variety of topics, you could start off your career a bit more quickly by maybe specializing in a topic or a skill that you want, and then so that you can get a foot in the door with a job where you're actually working and contributing to a company. And there's a lot of things that you learn on the job that is never taught to you, and the earlier you can get in there, the better for you, because that will give you all the foundations that you need to build a career in whatever direction. I think the other important thing about Skill at Will is that there's an emphasis on continuous learning, and I think one of the I guess a very common lazy attitude that I've noticed a lot of people have is that once you've graduated, you've got your degree or you've got your master's, you don't need to learn anything more. But it's when you start working a full-time job is when you realize that you actually don't know a lot. And being aware that you don't know a lot, and being aware that if you don't know something, you can easily fix it and apply it to your job to make your job better, to be better at it, is an attitude that people need to have. And I think with tools like Skill at Will, they will be able to achieve those goals quite easily.